Call the meeting to order. Trustee Gasser, Johnson, and Rude are excused. Let's stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comment. Going once, going twice. Moving on then. Approval of agenda and minutes. Everyone's had a chance to review the agenda and minutes. We're looking for a motion.
I move to approve the agenda and minutes from the 7/14.
We have a motion first by Trustee Stein. I'm not downstairs. Trustee Stein, second by Trustee Studi. Discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Passed. Excuse me. All right. And we are going to jump around here. We're going to go to the sheriff's report to get you moving so you don't mistake the presentations.
Appreciate that. Village board members, President Ernie Rossi, I'm Sergeant Fazio with the Sheriff's Office. I've been here before. This was prepared by Sergeant Litwin. In the month of August 2022, deputies spent more than 1 hour in the village. Deputies wrote 11 traffic citations for various traffic violations. Deputies also conducted 12 crime preventions, responded to a DOA call, a wire down call, and a barking dog complaint, amongst other calls for service throughout the month. Deputies continue to maintain an active presence in the village of Elmwood Park. Assigned deputies as well as area cars will continue to safeguard residential areas, ensure business security after hours, and conduct traffic prevention and enforcement in the spirit of community policing. In August, a billable time for the village of $59.56. Do you guys need this, or did you already receive it?
You emailed out.
You guys have it, okay. And I have the signed contract, which I'll get to Lieutenant Gary. Any questions for me?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, moving on then. Presentations. And a presentation of the 2022 Village Beautification Award.
Sure. So I'm in the place of Pat Black, who is the Beautification Award Chair. As you know, we started maybe 4 or 5 years ago with a variety level of judging. This year we happen to have a guest judge who is a master gardener, so it kind of kicked it up to a new level. She went around the village and gave her own perspective and ideas and determined that there was only one true winner of this award this year. And so we would like to invite you guys up, if you don't mind. And President Rouse, if you don't mind coming up here too. And we'll get a picture with you guys. So we'd like to award Aaron and Judy Morse, 3458 East Elmwood Drive, with the 2022 Beautification Award. This so reads that it's been awarded from the Village of Elmwood Park. The Beautification Award is given to those in the community who go above and beyond the stated ordinances of the village to take pride in their home and beautify their community. So if you haven't already been by, check them out on East Elmwood Drive. You can see a nice picture here that was taken as well, showing nice beauty of flora, nicely kept lawn, right? So who does the work here? It's all you? I did the hose. Well, we want to congratulate you and just thank you so much for helping to beautify the village, of course. So let's give them a round of applause. Just to accumulate you more, your picture and everything is not your picture, but a picture of your property is in our newsletter, so you can hear about that. And we'll send it a nice little media blurb everywhere else as well. So we'll let you hold that. I'll get a picture of you and our village president.
Hello. I've been watching.
We'll put a hand on it.
All right, so you just want to hold that up a little bit more. There you go. Ernie,
It's cold out there. Come on.
big smiles. Happy to be here. Awesome. And I should say new this year is a $50 New Year's gift card that we're giving as well. So there you go. Spend it wisely.
More goals a day.
There you go.
That's almost
Right.
there right now.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congrats, you guys.
Thanks.
Congratulations. You're welcome to stay. You're welcome to stay throughout the whole meeting if you want. It's got an interesting budget.
Fascinating stuff.
Goes on.
I'll bet there is. We'll stick around for a little bit.
Sure.
All right. Moving on then, next item, 2023 budget presentation by Administrator Jenkins.
Sure. Let me just fix the camera here. So get a little focused. Yeah, that should work. So everybody should have copies of this presentation in front of them. I know we have some new trustees, and this is the same annual presentation I do every year. It kind of gives you a high-level overview of the prepared budget for the next year. So before we get into it, I'll just remind the board that the village budget is literally the most important document, that policy decision you guys make every year. Everything that we do, right, regardless of which value it represents, is done via the monies that we collect and then expend throughout an annual basis. As you know, none of these documents are perfect. Every quarter, we still do line item adjustments as needed in order to make minor corrections as we need. But we pride ourselves in living within our means and truly sticking to this document as close as we can year after year. So first up, we have our organization chart. This hasn't changed, but as a reminder, at the top, of course, is our village residents. The village residents are who elect you all as the board of trustees and the village president. You then appoint and hire a village administrator, statutory treasurer, which is myself, and thereby everything else kind of gets spread out. Within the board of trustees, there are some set positions via ordinance: our finance chair, weed commissioner, street light and signs commissioner, and our roads and sewers commissioner. That's made up again of you as a board, who then advise myself on certain issues when it falls under one of those areas of expertise. And then the board on the other side appoints the planning commission, board of appeals, and our village attorney and assessor. Underneath, you guys also appoint village inspectors and our election officials. And then under my parameter, our hiring maintenance staff, call openers, closers, and our call sales rep. And then I also monitor the activities of those village inspectors, election officials, and our treasurer and assessor. And then next up here is just our village mission and statement. These haven't changed in the last 4 or 5 years. That's important to highlight in every document that every decision that we make should align with the values and mission statements that we hold true. So first off is a summary of our 2022 challenges. So as we know, we had a street lamp outage for a good portion of the year. That luckily, knock on wood, is fixed and should be for the near future. Our complex drive and windows reconstruction project, as we know, got delayed for a lot of reasons outside of our control. And the complex and DB just continue to have repair items that are really unforeseen that we continue to tackle year after year. But despite the challenges, we still have accomplishments. Our fine and interest continue to see an increase, which is great. We completed the purchase and design approval of the Stanley Park, which we'll continue to discuss about. We got new contracts that were negotiated or will be negotiated for snow removal and waste pickup. Snow removal one will be coming to you next month. We have new tenants in building 1, 2B, and 4B. We have increased communication, of course, as always trying to better ourselves. And then we have new formatting for line item QuickBooks and budget, which is what I'll be talking about in just a little bit. So, the one difference between this budget and years past is that this is literally a tale now of 2 budgets. Every year, we've been creating one operating budget, but then we became aware of a missed opportunity that the state grants to municipalities. So there's something called expenditure restraint, which means that if you keep your levy limit and thus your tax rate within a certain amount year after year, then the state awards you with additional dollars for keeping your rate at that same level. The problem that we've been having is while our tax rate, our tax levy has been appropriate, we also collect additional revenues that most municipalities don't. And that's via the leases here at the complex and at the school. Because those numbers fluctuate so much, it threw off all the numbers that we give to the state. So thereby, we didn't qualify for expenditure restraint because our numbers were thrown off so much year after year. So what we are advised to do via the state is to literally separate our budgets into two separate budgets. So what you're going to see me present is a tax levy operating budget, as in what are we collecting via governmental revenues and then expensed. And then you're going to see a lease budget after that. As you should expect, the tax levy budget is going to be limited income, a lot of expenses, but then it's going to get offset by the revenues that we generate via our leases. So we're first going to dive into tax levy. So the tax levy amount doesn't change. That continues to be about $115,000. And then our debt obligations don't really change either. There's a slight decrease of maybe $1,000, not even. So what you see is that tax levy, general property taxes remains the same. So what that means is if you take the amount of levy and you divide it by the assessed value, which also hasn't changed, your tax rate is not changing. So I'll show you a rate chart at the end of this presentation where you'll see that the 6%, which is what we had last year, is going to continue to be 6%. That doesn't change. So again, if you take away anything from this presentation, because residents always want to know, are my taxes going up? No, your taxes are literally pretty much staying the same. Under special assessments, again, we collect this if we have to specially assess a property for any work that we kind of are forced to take care of. So overgrown grass, right, fallen tree limb, things like that. We've been very fortunate. We only had one minor incident. That's $500. That'll get collected back on the tax roll. Next up, intergovernmental revenues. These haven't changed. Literally nothing has changed. It pretty much hasn't changed in the last couple of years. I say all that though to say that depending on a change in Madison in November, we might then see a change in a lot of these numbers come the next budget cycle. So just be aware of that. I can't foresee the future. I don't know what's going to be taken away, but we're going to see a change in the formula of how these dollars are dispersed to municipalities. We should just be aware of that. But as of this year, nothing's changing, so that's good. Next are licenses and permits. So building permits aren't changing. Dog license fees kind of went up to actuals. Electric permits aren't changing. Franchise cable fees aren't changing. And towing permits again are just a little bit up to actuals. So it's a lot of 8% change, but again, it's just balancing to where our actuals have been based on the previous year. And then fines and interest. So this is where I said that we've seen a big increase. Fines, forfeits, penalties. You can see in our 6 month, we were already almost at 2,000 when we had budgeted an income of 1,000. So it's safe to say we'll at least collect 3,000. This is not including the new ordinance change about marijuana that we talked about, that based on the Sheriff's Department's conversations should also increase that amount of fine revenue. Interest income, while maybe a year ago we were saying, man, interest rates are really, really bad, we're not going to get anything, we're going to get pennies, that's why we put it at 500. Obviously the market is very, very different now. Interest rates continue to go up. To give you an example, while we budgeted 500 in this last month's reconciliations, we got 500 from one account in 1 month in interest. So it's pretty safe to say that 9,000 would be reasonable if we remained at 2%. I should say that that includes us expending our, let's say, our windows and doors fund, right, which is kind of sitting there at 300,000. That's assuming we spend that money in spring for construction. So that case, and it's also assuming the driveway reconstruction that occurs out of the road funding. So then you see a summary of this budget. Obviously, taxes make up a majority of this budget's income, which is 86%. And then you see little slivers of everything else. So total revenues for 2023, again, just on the tax levy budget, is $333,000, which is about a 2% increase from the previous year. Any questions on this? now we're going to look at the expense side of the tax levy budget. So you're going to see here, this is our debt obligations. I'm still waiting on the exact breakdown of what the principal and interest is, but we do know the total amount. So the total pretty much hasn't changed. We haven't taken on any new debt for principal and interest payments. So that 171,431 is the amount that we're paying. And then I note on here the remaining years of each of the debts. We have 2 more years of paying for the complex. We have 12 more years of paying for phase 1 of the road debt, and 14 remaining years on the complex project, which is the windows and doors. Oops. Oh, there we go. And then we go to general government. So we have our association dues and conventions. That goes up just because everybody's dues and convention prices are going up. Audit and bookkeeping remains the same. Election wages, we're going to do 2 elections, cross our fingers, next year. So that cuts down that cost. Again, every other year, we either 4 elections or 2. So that changes those numbers. Our events line item remains the same. Printing and publication, we've just been doing more marketing stuff, so it makes sense to buffer that a little bit. Property insurance always goes up to standard 2%, so that's there. Special assessments remain the same. Again, that's if we have to spend money for mowing some of the grass, cutting out trees, things like that. That's where that money comes from. We have our tree surety account, and then village reassessment. So I'll point to the village reassessment amount. So a reassessment is when we hire our village assessor to literally do a reassessment of properties. And then he goes house by house and determines the new value of those homes. So that's done in one of 3 cases. 1, if you don't do it every 5 to 6 years, then it's mandated by the state that you do it. 2, you need to do it when it goes above, I believe, 12% of the average market. If the costs of homes, the values of the homes seem to be going up based on the assessor's assessment. And then 3rd, you could just decide to do a reassessment of your budget. We're doing it for the middle reason, that our village assessor has spoken to us and said, hey, values have gone up significantly since our last reassessment. You really, really, really should do a reassessment. Now, I say really, really, really should because you don't have to. You're not bound to do it until that window of time that I talked about. But you'll see that it's advantageous when we get to the tax rate discussion on why to do that. So this is assuming that we follow our assessor's advice, do the reassessment. He estimates a 20% increase in values. So the average home will go up in value by about 20%. So again, that's great. If you're selling your home, right, and you have a lot of value, it's great. If you want to see value in your home, not great if we, let's say hypothetically, took advantage of that, jacked up taxes, then obviously you're going to see a higher amount of tax. That's not what I'm suggesting to do in this budget, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. Any questions on that? Any questions?
When was the last reassessment?
We just did one in 2021.
Okay.
For the same reason, by the way, because that's when values again shot up big time. We were kind of forced to do payroll items. We have our attorneys just back up to 10,000. The rest of the items remain normal. We got all the elected officials again are adjusted based on the approved amounts that were put in place. It's accounting for those. And then mine is a set line item that was placed by President Rossi as a placeholder for future discussions. The one key thing here is maintenance staff. I'm recommending that we increase their salaries once again by $1. Again, this is not just a retention item for our current employees, but again, the time to come, we're going to have to hire and replace these people, and I want to make sure that we're competitive with McDonald's, Boston Store, whatever it might be, that's hiring nearby. So that's factored in here. So even with a $1 increase, it only increases by the 10%. That make sense? On the public safety side, animal control, I'm still waiting to verify that number. You can see that from 2021 to 2022, in 2021 it was pretty low, and then in 2022 it went up. Again, we're only talking about hundreds of dollars, so it's not a huge impact here. But they base their contract based off the amount of dogs they've taken over the previous year. They're still finalizing their numbers. I doubt it'll be as high as 450. That's pretty astronomical. So you might see that maybe 200 in the end. Fire department and dispatch, again, we have a new contract that we initiated last year. You see that $10,000 drop that we took advantage of. So now you're just locked into your normal contract that goes up by 2%. And police and sheriff continues to not change, which is amazing. So in all, this is just a 2% increase to public safety. On the public works side, we had conversations with John's Disposal. Their contract amount are going up for CPI costs for them. So that's where you see that reflected here with the 9 and 8% to garbage and recycling costs. Our lift station power costs haven't changed, road maintenance hasn't changed, sewer maintenance hasn't changed, science hasn't changed. But then snow removal, you see we added an extra 5,000 there. As we all know, we are very, very, very close in this year to using up almost all the 25,000. So this is just reflecting that we're probably going to get past 25,000 at some point. So that's a total to up with that. And then finally, street lighting hasn't changed. That's an overall increase of about 12% for those costs. And then we have our investments. So we call this investments, but for lack of a better term, it really is leftover monies. It's after everything has been paid for, how much can we set aside to put aside for ourselves. I'll remind the board, I know we have some new people, that this was not a practice prior to 4 or 5 years ago. So this is good for a couple of reasons. One, right now, with interest rates continuing to go up, we're taking advantage of that. And two, we're truly saving for a rainy day. We have 2 LGIP accounts that I'm pointing to here. We have 5,000 getting put into the lift station fund account. The village has 1 lift station. We're required by the state to have a separate account set aside for future repairs or replacement of the lift station. This has been sitting at about only like $8,000. Actually, before that, it was $5,000, and we threw in a couple grand. And so we're recommending putting in another grand. Knock on wood, if we don't use that next year for this purpose, President Ross and I discussed about using those funds actually to camera or begin to camera our sewer system. So that's, again, a good preventative maintenance thing. I don't know when's the last time the village was cameraed. Probably a really, really long time ago. So we're definitely due for that from not only a compliance standpoint, but again, just we'd rather know what the issues might be before something bad happens. So we'll use, again, probably a portion of that and not all of it to do a portion of the sewer system. And then the 37,000 is just a nice, comfortable number that we settled on to throw into our LGIP savings account for if and when we decide to use it. And so now we've taken all of those expenses, added them together, and we're at the 503 number, which is a 13,000 increase from 2022. So again, if you remember our first number, we had about 333,000 in income. But we have 503,000 in expenses. Where are we going to find the difference, Trustee Hinkle?
Rent?
Yeah, right here, right where we're standing. So let's take a look at that. So now we're on to the second budget. What we showed before was the first budget. This is now our lease budget. So our rental income, the biggest highlight and success of all these is that all of the buildings are rented, which again, is the first time this has happened in a very long time. So that's wonderful. You'll see that the majority of the increases are there based on the renewed contracts and things like that. Where you see decreases is just because in 2022 we predicted what the rent was going to be based on prospective tenants, whereas now, like in building 2, we know who our tenants are in that building, we know how much we're collecting, so that's now an accurate representation of that. In 4A, you'll notice that utilities went down. That just means they took over the utilities costs, so we no longer have to collect from them and then reimburse ourselves. It's just being paid for by them. And then the cell tower, I should point, while it's not huge, we do have a new tenant on our cell tower, which initiated an increase in that rent above the normal 2% increase that we get. So that's why you see a 9% increase overall in cell tower rent. So in total, we have about a 1% increase in our rental incomes. any questions on our tenants? Great. So now you take that number, you add it into all the income that we have here, and you'll see that the rent now covers 41% of all of our income. Taxes are about 52. So this is the same time that I say every year. Once upon a time, when I first came here, the past board had asked me, Chris, can you please do a profit and loss analysis for us and find out if it's really worth having the complex and BB school? Should we really keep it, or is it just a detriment to us? Yes, please keep this complex. You can't pay for everything else that you do without having the rent generated from this and BB school. So that is super duper important. Now, on the expense side, of course, there is a cost to maintaining these properties. We've stuck $12,000 into the BB school line item. BB school continues to be a metal building, surprise, surprise. They continue to have issues. We just had a sewer backup issue that we were dealing with last week. That was tons and tons of fun. You guys should have been. Anyways, so that's why you see a 20% increase there. Complex lights and fuel expenses don't change. Ground maintenance goes down because we covered a lot of this cost with the new fuel expense line item. And then the Taylor complex, you'll see an increase to $20,852. There's no exact reason of how we got to that number. Just every time we found either increased income or a savings on the income side, I tended to stuff that into maintenance because that's a really important line item that we continue to use. So overall, it's a 5% increase to our maintenance expenses. I will note that we carried over a couple of projects that we haven't done in 22, just because we haven't needed to. So these include, we planned on replacing 2 furnaces. Furnaces right now work, so we'll continue to monitor them and replace them if needed. Same thing with the AC in building 4 that we plan on replacing this year. It continues to work, so we're not going to replace it until we need to. But regardless, it's still an overall increase to our maintenance expenses. And then on the utility side, you see a majority of these remain the same or just more balanced to reflect actuals. That's the case for building 2 gas and building 3 electric. Where you see drops to 0, it just means that, again, the tenant is covering those costs now, so it's no longer an expense to us. Because we gladly would rather have the tenant take on those costs, that has decreased our overall utility cost by about 26%, which is very nice to see. That tended to be, especially as fuel costs went up, that was a scary item for us year to year. So then we tack in those expenses that we just went through with everything else. We get our grand total of expenses of $559, which is about an $8,000 increase from the previous year. When you look at the chart here, the largest expense, of course, is our debt obligations, after which they do our payroll, and then public works and things like that would be assumed. So then my final slide is the same chart that I've shown every year since I've been here, and this is your history of your tax rate. So again, we always start at 2004 because this is when levy limits began. So levy limits are what the state pretty much set as, hey, you can't increase your taxes more than X. So levy limits were put in place in 2004. Your rate started at about 4% and stayed around there for a number of years. Then in 2011, that's when the debt obligation payments began for the complex that we're standing in. That's when it shot up about a percentage that you see there. After that, it remained about that for a number of years again. You guys did a reassessment in 2017. You did not take on any other borrowing. So that means that the rate automatically dropped for the taxpayers from 5.6 to 4.9. It stayed there for 3 years. Then we took on the road obligation debt payments, which moved it from 4.9 to 6.4. We did so knowing that a new reassessment was going to occur next year. That's what happened. We did a reassessment. Had we not taken out additional debts, that would have dropped significantly. But instead, that board decided to do another round of borrowing, take advantage of that reassessment, and get the Windows loan that we have now. So that's why it only dropped to about 6%. We're still at 6%. I'm proposing again 6% for next year. Then what will happen is, again, if we do a reassessment as discussed, while it might hurt those that might not want to see the values of their home go up, The advantage of doing so is that you'll automatically see a drop in the rate. Because we're only allowed to tax a certain amount, that's not going to change. So now you're dividing out that amount by a larger amount of money, the assessed value of the village is increased, so it artificially drops the rate of the village. So assuming that that happens, and the future board next year does not take on any additional debt payments, you'll see that drop from 6 to 5%. Again, if no changes happen, it'll stay at 5% for one more year. And then your complex debt for this property will fall off and it'll drop significantly. I don't know why I'm showing here, it doesn't drop to 0. It drops to about like 3.4 or around there. That is the time that these task boards and plus Rossi and I talked about, that's when you do phase 2 of your road projects. You take advantage of that dramatic decrease because you no longer pay for this debt and replace it with the road funding for phase 2. So when we talked about road funding about every 5 years is when we do a phase, that's what we're talking about. We did the road construction last year, so by this timeline, we look at road construction again in 2026, 2027. That make sense? Any questions? Anything that I would go on?
Could you just go through so everyone has got a good understanding of how that levy limit works? How we try and catch that when, for example, the next year where we see a drop, if we were to take on new debt, how would make that rate stay the same?
And the same as like the 6 you're saying?
Yes.
Yep. So I'll use, actually there's no good here for example. So unless the levy limit calculator changes, you guys have been at about 115,000 for a long time. If you didn't have any principal and interest payments, the most you are physically allowed to tax people is about 115,000 to 116,000. So that number gets spread out amongst the value of the homes, right? And we're guaranteed to collect 115,000. If what the issue with that is that let's say you wanted to do more projects, let's say we wanted to do something cash in hand, right? Like all of us who are wise with our monies, let's say we wanted to buy that new car, right? We would then save and set aside more dollars, right, in our savings account until there's a time to do that. Well, the state doesn't really allow that. They don't like that. They want you to keep a tight belt, so to speak. And truly the only way that you can then increase the amount of monies that you get are by 2. If you go to a referendum to ask the taxpayers to increase your levy limit, which is very unpopular and typically is not meant to pass, or you can make an executive decision to borrow funds and then the principal and interest payments get thrown on top of the levy limit. So that's what we see happening. We have about 115. Back in my first slide. We have about 115 as the levy limit that we're allowed to get, and then we're currently collecting on top of that 115 the 172 debt obligation payments. So come next year, one could argue that, hey, there's a really important project that the village wants to get done. You have room. You could say, hey, taxpayers, we want to keep the tax rate at 6% and find out, well, what's the difference in that 1%? I don't know off the top of my head. But then you could fill that 1% difference with additional debt and interest payments. That go on top of the tax roll. You guys could tell your taxpayers, hey, we're not raising taxes, it's staying at 6%, but we actually are collecting additional revenues because we added principal and interest on top of the levy. It's a very long answer. Does that make sense?
And do you remember the number when we were doing the road project, we were looking at how we were going to bond it, we were evaluated for what our upper limit of lending was. Now, what was that number? I forget.
You can maximum borrow is up to 20% of your assessed value. That's a lot. It'll be a lot of money. You guys are only at like 2% of your maximum capacity.
There was a recommendation that you could go. Remember, I thought it was about $3 million.
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. But that's part of the budget book. These are debt practices. So you'll see that it's in last year's budget. And
just so you guys have an understanding of how much leeway we have. Do you want to go after that much debt? Not right now.
You definitely could. There are municipalities that certainly do that and hit capacities, believe it or not, for their debt obligations. That has not been a practice in Elvin Park, and I would not put that. Anything else? What you got? Any questions you have since you're here?
No, we're just gonna listen to you right on.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, yeah, that was it. So from here, I'll monitor if any of these numbers change. The only ones I can think of, as I mentioned, would be maybe the animal control and maybe some of the state funding, if any of those line items change. We did this budget presentation 1 month early just because we had most of the numbers that we needed. So you actually have 2 months to kind of digest this presentation. And then in November, I'll present the actual budget book that will be up for your final approval. At that time, we'll also do a public hearing that we're required to do. Notice it gets sent out to the paper, all that good stuff. And then after that time, hopefully you guys approve the budget. And then we start to collect taxes in December. Everybody's favorite time. Great.
Excellent.
That's what I have.
All right. Thank you, Administrator Jenkins.
Oh, wow.
Good job.
Do you feel informed?
I am now.
You should come to more meetings.
Right?
There's a lot of dollars flying.
All right, then.
It is good news, though, for everybody.
Thank you. All right, moving on, President's report. So the one thing I'd like to discuss is we talked about the village, the campus window project. So we did get bids in on that, but they were a lot, they were higher than we thought they'd be. I wouldn't say a lot, but we got a lot less bids than we thought we would get. So at this point, we're looking at a rebid. So we're going to send it out back over these late winter months and then look at this as a spring project again. So reasons for that, I would say, are these contractors are all busy. A lot of the blazing contractors right now are just at capacity. And the project got put out to bid probably 2 to 3 months later than it should have. So we hit them when they're in a lot of their projects already. So at this point, we're going to sit tight, send it out over the winter, and see what happens in the spring. The one thing I wanted to touch on in Chris's presentation, so when people are asking, what is the status of the village, the thing that I look at is really what are the conditions of our sewer systems, roads. We really don't have much in lighting. So lighting, we just tackled that one. Does it mean it's going to go away? And that it's stable? No, we're going to keep having to tackle that one until at some point we do have to replace the distribution system, which is how power gets to each pole. Right now we're good. Roads, we're on a good plan for that. When that falls off in 2 or 3 years on the 3 years, on the complex, that will be phase 2. So we're on track there. The one that's kind of in flux right now, and Chris talked about that a little bit in regards to the cammering, is cleaning up catch basins. So whenever we do the CMAR, which is the Compliance Maintenance Annual Report, the state requires us to fill out a form that says we are maintaining our village, which is a very good thing. So we have a few basins that we've been getting complaints, and then I ran into it personally when I tied into one of the storm basins for a drain on my property, and I realized how bad they are actually getting. So that's where we're going to be putting a little bit of money into the storm system, into the storm system next year. Otherwise, everything seems to be going well. I would like to thank the events committee and Administrator Jenkins for the events this year. I can at least speak for my family, which has been coming to all the Tunes on Taylor. It is great. Everyone has a good time. The food's good, and it's a nice, relaxing event. I do hope it continues. Thank you all involved on that one. And then National Night Out as well. I see more and more families coming to this. I've actually had people talking about it. You know, they see out cutting the grass, which is a rare occurrence these days. But a lot of good things. Everyone's noticing the events, and everyone feels the sense of community that's being developed. All right, and that's about it for me right now. Trustee Gasser, excuse. Trustee Hinkle.
Nothing new to report.
All right, Trustee Johnson, excuse. Road excuse. Stein. And Trustee Snoopy. All right. Administrator Jenkins.
Sure, well, a lot of stuff happens as we didn't have a meeting last month, but I tried to summarize some of the highlights of my report. We held the August election. We're prepping for the November election. And then I attended the UW Green Bay's Clerks Institute, which is a lot of fun. That's an intense 2-week, like full college courses that I took and went through and passed, so I appreciate your support on that. I updated about the Standish Lane property. We have that going on. Everything that you guys had kind of approved has been taken care of, signed, sent in. We have equipment that has been ordered, that is stored equipment on their site throughout the winter, and then plan on doing installation in spring. I also had meetings with electricians out there to discuss best placement for a lamp hookup in that area. And then we have a signed contract for demo work, which will clear that shed that's there and a little, whole birdhouse that's there as well. So that'll get taken care of. And then pretty much we just wait until spring and then installation will occur, which will be great. On the infrastructure piece, I think Tony Rossi covered most of that. Just know that we do have an updated estimate and quote from Asphalt Contractors, which is the contractor you guys approved to do the driveway complex. With the new engineering plans that we got, because the city recently wanted them, that didn't change the number too much at all, so we feel confident giving them a thumbs up. We can't give them a thumbs up until we get final approval from the city of Racine at the end of this month. So fingers crossed, this should still get done this year. Just so everybody hope and pray that. And then, finally, we've been prepping for budget stuff that I just went through, so should be good.
Questions, comments? All right, moving on, new business. Item A, Resolution 2022-10, a resolution authorizing the use of funds for 2021 and 2022 American Rescue Plan Act funds for the Standish Lane Park project.
Sure. So as part of the agreement with the federal government to accept and utilize ARPA funds, which are again American Rescue Plan Act funds, we need to have an official action by the board to that effect. To preface, and in government language, we're using these funds to cover lost expenses. Got it? But because those years have already passed, we now just have those funds to utilize for whatever reason. So this is going to be you guys approving that, yes, we're going to use these funds to cover lost revenues, and then after we've covered our lost revenues, we're using these funds for the purposes of creating the fund. And then we'll be all kosher and good in the federal government.
Need a motion?
I need a motion.
I move to approve resolution 2022-10. Do I need to state it?
We'll count that.
Okay.
We have a motion on the table to approve resolution 2022-10. Is there a second?
Second.
First by trustee Hinkle, second by trustee Stein. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, so passed. All right. Next item, discussion on official name of the Standish Lane Park parcel.
Hinkle Park.
It's already Rossi, so I just wanted, it's more fun for me around. No, there were a lot of satellite conversations that were happening, and I just wanted to corral everything together. So it's really an open discussion at this point. We don't have to make a decision today, and honestly, it'd be nice to have the full board here for this one, because it's a great thing that we're doing, not just for ourselves, the community.
It's a legacy for us.
So, I mean, we could talk about a plaque or something like that, but, the general discussion is, what should we be naming it after? Let's get the ball rolling on that. I mean, if we really want, we could break off into small groups and come back next month, but there's no real rush. I just wanted to start the process of that and to get some input. And I'm going to jump right into it because there's been a lot of conversation about a former resident who used to live on that property and used to do a lot of things for the community. I'm hearing stories about ice skating rinks. Chris was telling me about other events.
On that piece of property?
Yeah, they play
Really?
baseball games there all the time, and the guy would come out with his popsicles, and
I did not know that.
So the last name was Kaiser.
Kaiser Park is what they always call it. That's all my neighbors still call it, Kaiser Park.
Really? Learned something like that?
Yeah, I haven't lived here.
Apparently me either. 8 years is a long time.
Well, I'll add that Wendy Spencer, who all know used to be on the board, and sits on our plan commission, and there's a lot of history about Elmwood Park. She did reference that if we were leading in that direction, we could reach out to the Kaiser family, who do a lot of charitable donations in its name, and we can use that as a hope that maybe they can help donate towards
Sure.
the park as well, to cover some of the costs.
Is there any other ideas? I mean, the more I think about this one, I like it more and more. I mean, I wish there was a way to validate more of this, you know, obviously you have some
I think
experience
it
here.
is like some homage to like residents that were here long before us and their kids that we hope would come back and raise their families here and so on. I think that it's very charming. I think another option would be to kind of have an informal vote for the community and have everyone come in and do a little ballots, and I think that would be fun, you know, with like a top 5.
If we did a referendum though, it would be
Not a referendum.
it would be called Parking McPark Face.
Yeah.
Well, we were joking about that. You could
Oh,
be
park park.
the Elmwood Park Park. That's number 2 right now.
Yeah.
I would say the other one that's been brought up and is very minor is just calling it Standish Lane Park. That's been the
Yeah.
placeholder.
That would be
It's on
easy.
Standish Lane.
An easy fit, easy. The other thing I was thinking of is some kind of name that encompasses and reflects Elmwood Park as a place to live and raise kids and that kind of. What that is, I don't know, but
To that point, that's
Yeah.
where I think, so, whatever the name is, and then, you know, we blah, 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 whatever the park is.
right.
And then the reason the park was created, and then I put the board that was responsible for doing it, so then we got our.
Yeah, that's cool too.
So then we kind of hit everything in that.
Yes.
So then you get the name of the park, which Kaiser, I mean, that is making a lot of sense right now. Part of that, break from my chain there, is if we're looking at Kaiser, Chris, if we could task you to doing some research to make sure that there's not anything that could potentially come out.
Oh,
Well, certain dates, and this happened to us
I
in the
know.
past with an award that we gave out, which
Yes.
potentially became, you know, an issue, not directly, but indirectly. So we're gonna do a little bit of research, make sure that we're on the up and up, not
Well, that
trying to
came-
imply anything, but.
That came after the award.
But it makes you aware of the possibilities of such things
Correct.
before the fact too.
Correct.
So there's that. Is everyone on board with the plaque idea?
Sure.
That's a good idea.
that's pretty standard for municipalities.
Well, just think about it. If anyone's got ideas, I mean, if you want to reach out to me, that's fine. I'll tell you if I've already talked to too many people about it.
Oh, that's
Otherwise, then you
around.
talk to Chris. So then that'll be our, he'll aggregate all the ideas together, and then we can talk about it again
Sure.
next month.
Okay.
Is anyone proposing any other action?
On that?
I just wanted to formalize, because everyone, all the trustees have been hearing, people have been coming to them,
Yeah.
talking about ideas, and it's very exciting, so I just wanted to formalize the process
Okay.
in an informal way.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so then, I'd say do we need to table that, or do we just keep it on as a new business item in action?
Yeah, it's just listed as discussion.
All right.
Discussion.
All right, leave it alone. Next item C, motion to go into closed session pursuant to state statutes 1985, section 1, subsection C, consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, which would be village administrator contract renewal. I need a motion.
I move to go into closed session.
We have a motion by trustee Nichols to go into closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Studi. Roll call. Aye. Rossi, aye.
Hinkle, aye.
All right. We're in closed session. Now you get it.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Front window now.
Spread the word to your neighbors to come to more meetings.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
You gotta admit, you learned a lot in a little bit of time about the budget.
Heard a lot of.
There we go. Okay. Back from closed session. Next item on the agenda, the motion to approve the two-year contract with Christoph E. Jenkins as village administrator, clerk treasurer for the 2023-2024 term. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve the two-year contract as presented.
All right, we have a motion by trustee Hinkle to approve the two-year contract with Christoph E. Jenkins as village administrator. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by trustee Studi. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, so passed. All right.
I'd like to say thanks. You're welcome. Look forward to continuing to do great stuff.
All right, next item, approval of accounts payable. Everyone, I hope, has had a chance to review.
It's 2 months from now, so.
I got it. Oh. I did the same.
Okay, I'll look for a motion.
I make a motion to approve the accounts payable.
All right, we have a motion to approve accounts payable by trustee Hinkle. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by trustee Stein. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, so passed. And we're adjourned.